Welcome to our third edition of our Faith Family Podcast. And today we have Dr. Austin Lingerfelt and his wife, Jessica. And so kind of do a little introduction here. And then I was kind of chuckling to myself earlier because I want to talk about a little bit about having like a large family and how to handle time and all that kind of fun stuff. And just getting you guys' schedule to be able to do this is a mini miracle within itself.
Yes.
Yes. So Jessica, why don't you start, kind of introduce yourself, kind of give a little background about yourself.
Okay. I grew up in the church. Austin and I got married in 2006, and we have 5 kids, ages 13 to 3, and we're busy.
Very busy. And Austin?
Grown up here my entire life, and as I said in the meeting today, I do whatever I'm asked to do, whether for the church or for the school, and do my best to be a good father. And of course, the Lord comes first, but second, family. So I do my best to be a good father and do my best to do a good job at whatever I'm asked to do for Faith Christian Center or St. Paul's.
Right. And you grew up with one sibling, and you grew up with one sibling.
Yes.
So it makes complete sense that you have 5 kids.
Yes, we did not understand the large family dynamic at all. So let's have 5 kids.
Yes.
Christine and I were aware to some degree of some of the challenges my parents had and that they wanted to have more children.
Sure.
We have siblings that are with the Lord.
Right.
And so I always had it in my heart to have a large family.
I didn't.
There were certain families like the Jeters or the Lands that were big families, and the Miles, and I always thought, well, that's really cool, and I want a big family. And
was that because like the camaraderie and like the activity that
Don't
you
look at
kinda
me.
saw
I always
going on,
thought too, because my mom, she said I have 2 hands, one for each child, and
Right,
so that's what I always thought.
Yeah.
And
I think I was just aware of my parents, desiring to have more children
kids.
who are with the Lord.
Right.
And so I just had it in my heart to have a large family. And so the Lord, I realized that can be a challenge, and so we're thankful for all the children that God has blessed us with.
Right. So for like people that are getting married or maybe newly married couples, did y'all kind of have a discussion about
we
this?
did, because he said he wanted a large family, and at that point when we discussed it, I had said I only wanted 2. And so then I talked with my mom about it because, she had 2, and she said, this isn't a discussion she and I had in high school, but once Josh and my brother and I got older, she realized, I'm past the age where I can have more children.
Right.
And then that she wanted some and
Right.
thought I didn't want to start over.
Right.
So she had told me if I could do it again, I would have had more.
Right.
And then she said, if you're financially in the place for it or like you feel comfortable in it, she said, have more children.
Right.
And so then I took my time and then got back with Austin and said, okay, I'm comfortable with 5,
Right.
so.
Right.
But yeah, we did talk about it beforehand because.
So what were some of those kind of roadblocks in your mind that you had to kind of get those hurdles you kind of had to get over to really say, yeah, okay, I'm cool?
Yeah, it was just the idea of, well, how do I distribute my time with everyone? Sure. How do we make schedules work? And, the financial is always a decision.
Right.
But, we're in a faith church, so the finances weren't as big. It was just kind of like, how do I stretch myself with a husband and 5 kids?
Right.
But then, then you realize, well, you're not just given 5 kids at one time.
No.
You kind of learn it as you go along, or if maybe 3 or 4 is your limit,
Right.
So we kind of learned as we went along. But we were intentional on, okay, well, if we want 5 kids,
get it done.
we can't have 4 or 5 year age gaps. So we did, once we were more serious, we did plan that a little better. And like Austin said, we're thankful that we were able to have them around the time that we planned and had a pretty close age gap.
Right.
I mean, 10 years for 5 kids. So.
Yeah, that's a lot, yeah.
And it's not always easy. We're faith people, so we're positive.
Right.
And we don't dwell on the negative or the difficult. And sometimes people misunderstand that. The first child and adjusting to everything is way more difficult than the 4th or the
Oh,
fifth
yes.
child.
The first child was definitely the hardest for
it's,
me.
It's world changing, isn't it?
Yes. There's
Yeah.
someone who depends wholly on you, and
Right.
it's just you.
Right. Right. Because I know sometimes you might face this of young couples kind of deciding like, okay, when do we have a kid? I don't feel like I'm ready. You know, I don't feel like we're financially ready. And sometimes you just gotta do it, right?
Yeah, I don't know if waiting. I mean, you do have to be responsible to some degree, if you know you absolutely can't afford it. But yeah, you do it's like a leap of faith, kind of like we're ready, because I don't think you fully understand the responsibility till you have one. No matter
Sure.
how much you're around children,
Right.
you don't understand the decisions and everything that go along with it.
Right.
I think it's a matter of faith in the heart, and I do think that there is being ready and responsible. But then I do think the other side is that somebody can wait too long,
Yes.
where that makes things more of a challenge in many ways.
It's not an old man's game, is it?
Well,
No.
I was maybe asleep for about an hour last night and heard Emily. She's been overcoming,
Uh-huh.
and so
And I was asleep hard after doing elementary girls basketball practice yesterday.
Right. Right.
So he heard her.
went in and but sometimes she'll snore, but she was just finally asleep quietly. But I had to wait till I was certain she was asleep. But now that I'm 41,
Right.
challenge for me is quietly exiting the room without anything snapping or
Crackle pop, yes.
So when people ask, "Hey, Austin, are you done?" I think we're good. We're good.
Oh, yeah, we're
We
good.
have a quiver full, and we're good.
Right.
I did my 5. No.
Well, and you are now entering this phase of your marriage and your life here that, like you said, 13 is the oldest right now, and then the youngest is
3.
3. So you're hitting teenagehood.
Yes.
Welcome
Yes.
to the club.
We need
Yes.
all the advice.
But
No.
you're still dealing with a
Toddler.
It's very demanding.
Yes.
Right.
I thought the 5th would be a little easier going, so that was shocking.
Right.
But and then it's cute, the other large families in the church to talk to other 5th-borns, like your sister, and say,
Yes.
okay, now I understand the 5th-born a little more.
Right. Isn't it amazing that once you hear the backstory of people, you kind of
Yes.
understand a little more their personalities and
Yes.
kind of why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
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 So, with that age difference, let's hit first of all about what's the number one thing or the top things that you guys have learned, because you didn't experience it growing up, but what are some things that you've kind of learned now that you have 5 kids and now that they're growing up, and I'm sure there's all kinds of policing you're doing and refereeing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I would say that the only way to have peace and to make it is to literally live out what Jesus taught on the Sermon on the Mount, that every day has enough trouble of its own.
Right.
And so don't worry about tomorrow. I mean, we plan and we're responsible,
Right.
but
Yes.
for us, every day it's okay. What are we doing today? What has to happen today? Who gets dropped off when? Who gets picked up when?
Yeah.
What's the game plan? And while we're focused on that, our children, they probably get it from me. Well,
What's next?
What's next?
Yeah, they're
week?
asking us, we're
all
like, be
these
quiet.
questions.
Right.
But for us, every day, really the focus is, all right, what are we doing today? What's the plan for today? And with a family of 7, 5 kids, and everything they're doing, the activities, the sports, I mean, for me, that's how we make it
That's how
every
you make
day.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't this week, but normally I'll make like a weekly calendar, Sunday through Saturday. So communication is key. Austin knows, hey, I need you to cover for me here. I've got this basketball game, or I don't want to drive to this game. It's, an hour away. Can you
Right.
drive to that game and watch? So, or because there is 5 kids, and thankfully we do have help. Like I might ask my mom for help or Pastor Sue for help.
Right.
So that way we're lining it up. It's not just, chaos all the time, which there is with 7 people, there is, but we're kind of organize it somewhat, and everyone knows what they're responsible for.
Right.
And-
Right. Right. And where they're going. And
Yes,
what
you
they're
have
doing.
practice, you pack your jersey, and I still check it, but teaching them that responsibility as they go along and me telling them, I'm not your maid.
Right.
You've got your responsibility.
Daddy, you forgot my bag.
No,
I
you
did
forgot
not
your
forget
bag.
That's your job.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. 5 backpacks is a lot of backpacks to keep track
yes.
of without sports bags, PE bags, so
Sure.
they've learned that's your stuff.
Right.
Or, like with Samuel, we went to baseball one time. He didn't have his glove. I was like, well, I grabbed your bag. I didn't think of
Right.
searching the contents of it,
Right. Right. So you're teaching them responsibility.
Yeah.
They have to pitch in.
Yeah.
They're not just along for the ride.
No.
They're a part of the family.
Yeah. It would feel like we're just dragging along if we had to do everything.
Right.
Yeah, and we're at a point now where the older children are helping with the younger children.
And it's really sweet to watch the bonds with the older ones with the younger one, because Austin and his sister are 3 years apart. Me and my brother are 2 years apart. So there wasn't like babies around. So it's fun to see them have that interaction with younger kids.
But it is at that stage where they're helping and assisting, and that's nice. That's a blessing.
Right.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice for them to see, oh, look how much my parents do all the time,
Good for them.
Yeah.
Right. Right. To see that it's not just all a free walk.
Yeah.
That there's things that has to be done.
Yep.
And I'm sure you have a wide variety of personalities within 5.
Yes.
All type A.
Yeah, but somehow all type A, genetics there, a little
Yeah,
strong.
I wonder where that comes from,
Yeah,
right?
a little strong.
Right. So how do you kind of deal with the different personalities and the different children?
It's a challenge too, that when we're having to discipline the little ones, that it's not all 5 are getting disciplined, or all 5 are going straight to bed. So yeah,
That did happen the other day. I was like, okay, just everyone in your room, because it's just too much.
sometimes I do have to remind myself of that. So part of it's being mindful that they're each 5 different, unique individuals, different ages, different maturity levels, and obviously the 2 oldest girls, what happens now for them in terms of discipline or correction looks very different than the 2 youngest.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, in real time, not getting into anger, but
Right.
maintaining the grace and peace of God, and then differentiating that, well, it's one set of consequences for the older kids are a different conversation than for the 2 youngest or the one in the middle.
Yeah,
So I know some of these principles you've learned from your parents, but of course with 5 kids it's a little bit different. So where else have you kind of gleaned information from, or do y'all kind of like talk things out, or does it kind of you kind of figure things out as you go along, or?
Yeah, it's just kind of been as we go along. I do follow like a few large families on Instagram, just mostly not even for advice, just the idea of, other people are making it.
Identify with
Yes,
this?
like
It's not just
I get
us?
you. Yes,
Yes.
and it's not really for advice, just because there's so many different perspectives on parenting. But yeah, we'll talk with each other, or even, like I said, some of the adults in the church who grew up in large families, I'll ask them advice, like, did that work for you, or did you feel like you had enough time, one-on-one time with your parents? Like, so I do ask people I trust, like, their
Right.
perspective on things.
Right.
And of course, God's word is the authority.
Right.
And that drives everything in terms of, how we do marriage, how we do family, how we do parenting, how we do discipline.
Right.
I think because of my parents also were very much influenced by James Dobson, Dare to Discipline, the Strong-Willed Child,
Yeah.
which for us, the Strong-Willed Child, that
It's for all of them.
informs and helps us to understand like how to parent very detailed type A children with strong wills,
Right.
and then how to guide and discipline them when they're little, but then as they get older.
Right.
And so again, I know that we live in a time where people have all kinds of theories or opinions or ideas, or maybe someone grew up in a home where there was discipline, but discipline without love or grace.
Love, yeah.
Yeah.
So then they go to the other side of the ditch. But at the end of the day, if we're going to please God, we have to do what His Word says. And the Word says that you spare the rod, or you spare the hand of correction, discipline, you spoil the child.
Yeah.
And we don't want spoiled, rotten fruit in any area of life.
Right.
And so we have to hold ourselves accountable to God's word.
Right. And you kind of mentioned a few minutes ago about teaching your kids responsibility. So you kind of mentioned, okay, you got to have your you need to make sure that you have your stuff together. What are some other ways that you kind of build these life lessons to, because I know that some of these probably come at you at the same time with multiple kids.
That's a thing with large families is sometimes, I think with smaller families, you'll have one child test the limits here and there.
Right.
But with 5, there's days where it's 2 or 3 of them on the same day
Right.
testing the limits, and you're like, oh my goodness. And you just, that's when you've got to turn to either prayer or the other, spouse and say, they're ganging up on me, I need help, or, take a break, everyone go to their rooms.
Right.
But as far as responsibilities, we do have chore sheets. We're not super strict on them, but just an idea for what they can get like extra money on. But yeah, just taking care of your stuff, having pride of ownership is a big deal for us because Austin and I are both that way. Like with our cars, they're clean, they're organized. So we want that and to transfer over to them to take care of what they were blessed with.
Right.
And to know that everything doesn't come right away when you ask. Some things are earned or taken away on behavior. So then if you don't treat your stuff right, it might be taken away for a little while. So
Right. And the demand of how do you guys handle sometimes when several kids are demanding your time? Or, because kids can kind of go through phases where, sometimes they're like, oh, I don't really, I'm not really interested right now. And then other times they're like, hey, look at me. Plus, you guys are married, right? So you have your marriage to deal with as well. So how do you kind of balance your marriage and children at the same time?
That's not, it's, and again, we're positive faith people, so I think sometimes people could have the wrong impression that
everything's easy.
It's always good.
Yeah, no.
And again, it's not our nature to get up and say, oh, you wouldn't believe the difficult week I had. So,
Right.
Or how long it took to get to church.
Yes.
it's a balancing act. And like the 2 youngest, their ages can be, their demands can overwhelm like everything else. And so part of it is carving out time for Sophie, for Michaela, for Samuel. Part of it then is like today's Julia's birthday. Every time I see her, like, it's your birthday. And, making her feel really special about that. So part of it's carving out time for each of them and then being mindful of things that are important to each of them. Like for Samuel, his baseball games are really important to him.
Right.
And then, for Jessica and I, yes, we have to have time together. And so that's why, like, their bedtime is important. And once they're in bed, they need to stay in bed. They shouldn't be out in the hall asking a follow-up question or wanting, like, the third hug or whatever. It's
Right.
sweet,
Yeah.
but you need to go to sleep.
I gave you a hug, but my brain is off now.
Parents always emphasized, having a planned date night. I think for us with 5 children, with all that I do, all that Jessica does, that's not necessarily the easiest thing. Plus, I don't really feel that it's fair with 5 children to leave all 5 with Jessica's parents or all 5 with my parents. I
Right.
feel like that's a little
It's a
much.
lot.
Yeah.
So again, we're mindful of time with each other, or going to eat lunch or dinner, seeing.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of day dates anyways, so and I don't really like eating out really that much anymore, but we'll do stuff during the day because by the time night comes, I mean, we're both pretty
Ready for bed.
tired. Yeah. Yeah. And so, just with how our schedules are, usually Fridays we'll try to spend more time during the day. And so that way we're not trying to figure out a date night and babysitter or who can handle all of them,
Right. And when you're with each other on a date, do you have like certain like boundaries? Like, okay, we're not going to talk about,
No.
or do y'all just talk about everything?
Yeah, we're we've been married how many years now? 17 years. So, I'm pretty lenient on that because ministry and with most jobs, if you get called to do something, you do it. I'm not going to be upset. Like, Friday's our day. We can't
Right.
do that.
Right.
I know there's more time, and so
Right.
pretty lenient on all that.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's really more about just
Not
time
being
with each other.
interrupted is really, that's the thing. It's just not being interrupted, no matter what the conversation is. As long as we're not being interrupted, that's what's
Yeah,
nice.
I feel so bad now because when my parents used to lock their bedroom door, I used to like bang on it and like stick my mouth underneath there, like, "Hey, mom and dad." I didn't realize
They
that
just needed quiet?
they just needed peace and quiet.
Yes.
Right. Grew up a family of five. They were just trying to get away
Yes.
the best they could.
Yeah, so that they weren't like acting out in anger. They knew when they
Right.
had to like step back, like
Right.
it's time to just retreat and stay back.
Right.
But part of the like controlling the chaos is not overstretching ourselves, which we're busy, but we haven't. The school and church come first. So church activities and then school teams, and then the one team we do outside the school is a league that Austin and I both agreed we liked, and we liked the rules, and we knew the coach, so that's why we did that one league.
Well,
And
they're
it
not-
never interfered with church,
Yeah, it doesn't interfere with church.
Wednesdays or Sundays.
And then they're not also like these expectations that these kids at
Make
7
them
or 8
professional.
need to
Yes.
prepare for their professional career.
Right.
Well, so that way it keeps Wednesday and Sunday peaceful, even though it is chaotic, like trying to get to church and all
Sure.
that. But there's no other expectations of us on Sundays or Wednesdays
That's
besides church and then Wednesday school and church, but there's nothing else. So there's no excuse to not be at church on Wednesday night.
And you mean your kids are okay? They're well-rounded.
Yeah.
And they're experiencing life.
Well, and
all
that's
that
what
stuff.
it's funny because I'm trying to understand my kids as they're preacher kids, which Austin grew up as a preacher kid. I didn't.
Right.
But because I grew up in the church, my parents, we were here every time the door opens, and none of us got paid to do that.
Right.
So I grew up with it like that. So I don't see it as taxing.
Right.
It's, we're taught it was a privilege, and I saw my parents volunteer in the church growing up. They still
Right.
do, and
Right.
they think and we know it's a blessing and that it keeps them protected. And so I see that, and I want our kids to see that, not just from a preacher kid perspective, which is important because sometimes they can be tainted, but just from as an individual, how important church is to them.
Right.
No, and I mean it when I sometimes say, like on a Sunday morning, that, if I wasn't called to full-time ministry
Still be here.
and Jessica, was an engineer working for a gas and oil company, we lived
Right.
in Houston, we would be in church every weekend.
Right.
And we'd be in church midweek, and our kids would be a part of the youth group
Mm-hmm.
or the children's ministries. We'd be faithful and not just attending, but helping,
Mm-hmm.
tithing. I mean, that's the life we would live, because I've seen that that's the life, whether somebody's here at Faith Christian Center, or like Derek and Christina in Missouri at James River Assembly, or
Right.
young couples that have moved off to other states. When somebody is planted in a good church, it may not be exactly like Faith Christian Center, but they're in a good church with a good pastor, believes the Bible, and they're faithful in their attendance,
Right.
their help, their giving.
Right.
That long term, there's good fruit.
Right.
And so that's the kind of life and family and the example we would set, regardless of whether or not I was called to full-time ministry.
Right. Right. Because it's that important.
Well,
Right.
if
And it doesn't take away from you.
well,
It
No, and that's
actually
what we want them
adds.
to learn. This is the easiest way to live.
Right.
Is this way, and you're protected, and there's blessings with it that come with it. So we want them to learn that on their own.
Well, if they grow up and see the example that, Sunday or God is something that we do after we do 10 other things, and there's nothing else conflicting, and there's no Cowboys game at noon, then we might go to church once a
Right.
month.
Right.
Well, what will their pattern be someday?
It'll be even worse,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
They're gonna do
we've
worse.
seen that it just the pattern gets worse. It doesn't get better with bad
Yeah.
behavior or
Well,
bad patterns.
Like with pastors, they've set the example of what we want, and then so what we want for our lives, well, we want for our children's lives. You know,
Right.
that peace and prosperity, but the closeness to God too.
Right. So, how do you guys handle conflict resolution between siblings?
Thought you were going to ask with each other.
No, we'll get to that. No.
After we're not interrupted. No.
Right.
Well, that's what's important though is, we both believe the same. We go to the same
Yes.
church. So conflicts, they do happen, but they're never like big knockout things.
Not major things.
And we agree on parenting. We agree on how children should be raised. So there might be an issue of, I think maybe you were too harsh on this discipline or not. Little things like that. But overall, we agree on everything.
Right.
Well, we tell the kids family is family. You'll always have family. And so right now, Sophie and Michaela share a room. Julia doesn't, but here at some point she'll probably share a room with Emily.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Sophie will get upgraded to her
own room.
Oh my gosh.
But we tell them these are your siblings. This is your family. That in life when there's a challenge or somebody lets you down, family will be the one that's there for you. So
Right.
be kind and be gracious and
Right.
like I'll tell Sophie, there were times when you were Michaela's age and you needed help or you needed encouragement, and so you've got to now do that for her. And Michaela's younger, but she wants to be like on the same level as Sophie.
the older.
It's
yes.
challenges or
Yes.
do everything Sophie does, or
Right.
have like the same responsibility level as
Right.
Sophie. And so we do our best to coach them to again be kind, to be gracious, and to encourage, and to be a good sibling to
Right.
each other. And it's like sometimes the biggest conflict is Samuel will want his older sisters to
Play with him.
and they don't want to play with their brother.
Right.
And
Right.
we did our best to bless Samuel with another brother, and
Right.
it is
Didn't
what it
work
is.
out.
So we'll have to sometimes encourage the girls to like, hey, he just wants to play with you, so
Right,
got to do
right.
something.
Just give
that
them
he
10
wants to do
minutes,
for a little bit.
Right. Right.
And they're all different. The other day, Jessica and I needed a break. I think it was challenge with Emily. And so and then Julia was a little upset about something. So I asked Sophie and Michaela, I thought I was doing the right thing. I asked Sophie and Michaela to play Barbies with Julia.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Which she enjoyed, but
they did, but then they left like they got all the Barbie stuff out in Julia's room, left everything out. And Julia is really like type A, organized, clean, detail freak.
Right.
Like someone we all know. And
I don't know who that could be. at
yeah,
this table.
several people in the Lingerfelt family.
Right.
several.
So she was really distraught. And, Daddy, look what they did to my room.
And so we're like, they will clean it.
I thought I did the right thing by getting the older sisters to spend some time with her. But
Right.
Well, but we fixed it. We said, well, they'll help you clean it tomorrow
Right.
morning. Because, of course, that's what's hard is bedtime is when everyone's tired. We're tired and we're trying to just get through it. And, it feels like sometimes you give your best before you get home and you're trying to remember, like, well, it's the people at home that really do matter the most. And you're
Right.
like, I've got to remember
Right.
that patience I used all day today, it still has to happen at home. And sometimes I have to remind myself that. I pray for patience every day. So
That's so
trying-
interesting, isn't it? How we give our best to everybody out, strangers or on the work or on the
Right.
job. But when we get home, it's like, don't bother me.
yeah, like, ugh,
Yeah.
so
And as far as like conflict in general, Dr. Kevin Lehman has written on birth order, and there is a lot that factors in with birth order.
Sure.
Jessica and I are both firstborns.
Mm-hmm.
We're very much type A, opinionated. We both have strong wills. But if someone takes the time to go back and watch or listen to the Successful Marriage Seminar by pastors or read You, Me, and God, as they point out, anything with two heads is a monster. So on the one hand, in our home, because there is a husband, there is a father, yes, I'm the head, but biblically we are helpmates to each other.
Right.
And so, I think my tendency is to be a little probably too graceful.
and mine's a little too tough.
Tough. So, but we also have to be helpmates to each other and present a united front to the kids.
Right.
And back each other up. And then there are times where they've just worn her down or they've worn me down.
Oh, sure.
And that's the time
the
where it's
game,
like
right?
got a tag team.
Yeah.
And somebody else has to step into the ring to
Right.
handle things.
Right.
Because somebody just
It's-
can't do it anymore. At
it's
least not for the next
Yeah,
hour.
they were
tapping out.
interrupted too many times. So
Yeah.
while trying to not burn dinner, you know.
Right.
Like,
They're very good at that, aren't they? Very
Yes.
persistent.
yes, I see you have your hands full. Let me ask you a question.
Right.
Do you not see I have stuff in my hands?
Right. Right.
So-
Well, that growing up together and in the same room is great. I mean, I had my older brother with me for a while, then I had my younger brother with me for a while, and I learned so much about how to handle each other and
Being
how to-
close.
being close in the same space
Yes.
and not wanting to murder each other.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many lessons. That's why I think it's awesome that you guys, even though you grew up maybe with just one sibling,
Mm-hmm.
have this experience of having 5 in the home, which is, I'm sure, a lot of fun.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you know, there's, like we said, there's really great moments, and there's moments like, can I just hide from everyone? And,
Right.
But like last night, it was great. You know, 4 of us watched the World Series together. The 4 that won to watch it. The others were kind of busy being quiet on whatever, an
Right.
iPad or whatever. But it was peaceful for about 30 minutes of all of us just sitting. And
Right.
it was nice, you know,
Right.
to have that quiet time together.
Right. Well, hopefully, as the older they get, the more that's to come.
Yes, of sitting.
Well, it's a season, and I think that's what I would say to everyone, that these are seasons, and to enjoy the seasons, and but in the difficult times, the challenging times, remind yourself, well, it's challenging, it's difficult, it's frustrating, maybe even discouraging, but it is a season, and this season will come to an end, and there'll be another season.
Right.
Sometimes I see the young couples with their first baby, and I just wonder how much sleep everyone's getting. And of course, we all feel the pressure from social media to say, my baby sleeps from 7 p.m. to 10 a.m.
I got them on
next day.
schedule right away.
Yeah,
So-
I'm like,
By following the moon or something.
Every child's different. Some are easier than others, and some do sleep all through the night, and some
Right.
don't. And
Right.
but my encouragement is it's temporary. It's a season, and so
Right.
to make the best of it. There's a great message Joel Osteen does where he talks about how busy he was in that season where their daughter, their second born, was a little baby, and how today it saddens him because they were so busy with the church, he doesn't really remember her as a little girl.
Right.
And so when I hear that, it reminds me that, there may be these challenges, but to just keep everything in perspective.
Right.
Right.
Because it goes fast. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes fast. I mean, I remember when Sophie was born,
right.
and then now I turn around, you guys got 5.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it goes fast, and those seasons do come at you, and the whole remembering thing is so important.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me because it's like the more we're documenting everything with cameras, our phone cameras, but yet people don't remember every aspect like they should.
Yes. I will say, as a mom of 5 who's tried to talk to other mom of 5s or larger families, once a mom is out of those tough seasons, she kind of looks back at it with rose-colored glasses.
Yes.
And they're not really the best ones to ask on that stuff.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because you're like, wasn't it awful? And they're like, no, it's great. And you're like, it is
It
awful.
feels awful right
Like,
now.
I just need some commiserating with me right now.
Right.
So
That's like someone looking back at a battle.
yeah,
and
so
talking
maybe
about
someone
it.
who
Yeah.
had just gone through it would be my advice. Maybe not someone who's going in it, and maybe not someone who's been too far from it, who forgets how tired your body can feel
Sure.
and your brain. And so you do have to be careful with that kind of advice if they're too far removed from it.
It's like my mom's mom. She says that Christine and I were perfect as children, that we never needed any discipline. Yet I remember
Yes, you
her
remember it, yeah.
chasing us around the house when she'd watch us from my parents with a spoon. Like, come back here.
It didn't feel perfect. Did it?
Whereas pastor's just brutally honest, and he'll periodically say that Pastor Sue gave me a spanking every day, whether I needed one or not.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
And, everyone has to remember that when they seek counsel and advice or just encouragement.
Well, and that's the power of being in a local church.
Yeah, a church
A
family.
good church family, because you have different groups of people. Like there are families or couples that Christian and I identify with because we're kind of at the same level, or we're at the same part of our lives, right?
Right.
And you need that kind of reinforcement so you don't
Yeah.
feel like you're the only one, or you're, oh my gosh, my kid is not perfect.
Right. Or yeah, like when when the first went through the college phase, that's a
Yes.
whole different world
different
that we don't
aspect.
understand. So we would be
Right.
looking to others or maybe to you
Right.
to say, help us through this,
Right.
this new thing we got to go through.
Right, absolutely.
So,
Well, I know you guys are busy, so we appreciate your time. And if you have any questions or any follow-up questions or anything that they want to hear us talk about, please let us know in the comments or send us an email or let us know, and we'll see you next time.